Good morning, YouTube. Welcome to Truth Be Told with Don V. We have a lot of interesting information here, and before we get to the breaking story today of UN vehicles, let's go ahead and look at some other reports that we have on the pundit and just the news. Hold on one second here. Okay, the first one, it says the statement from last year is completely false. Former White House COVID-19 testing Caesar flips on Fauci, says he lied on origins of virus. And we have a video here. Let's go ahead and just play this video. Let's see.
Welcome back and good morning to you.
Good to be here. Thank you.
Excellent. You believe this was a lab leak. Why?
I do, and I really became convinced of that with the WHO report in March, which showed definitively that there was no environmental source, there was no intermediary host, there was really nothing linking this to any virus in the natural world. But on the other side, the evidence was becoming compelling. Look, there was a laboratory within 5 miles of the origin that was doing dangerous research on bat coronaviruses. Sometimes the simplest explanation is that. We do have lab leaks. They've happened multiple times. SARS has leaked out of laboratory and even caused secondary deaths. We know that in 1979, anthrax leaked out of a Soviet laboratory and killed 60 people. So lab leaks are not uncommon. And I really think data like people getting ill in November from the laboratory, if that proves true, that coincides exactly when we know this virus hit China.
I got a number of questions here. Let's go through it now. Why didn't you say this a year ago?
So I did say it a year ago. I was very clear that the only thing we knew was that there were no obvious fingerprints of this virus being engineered. I always kept open and was very public about it, that it could have been a lab leak. That was in distinction from Dr. Fauci, who really argued very convincingly that this was something that evolved in nature. There was no data that showed it evolved in nature, and there's still no data that showed
Okay,
that.
all right. Now, so the government, the U.S. government knew that Chinese workers in Wuhan became sick in either October or November of 2019. That's got to be clue number one. Why don't we talk about that?
So, that was released by the State Department in January. So, this is probably a summary of various different intelligence sources. So I certainly didn't know that early on. Did not know that there were people who were ill. And remember, there was a huge cover-up by the Chinese Communist Party, the Chinese government, that really locked down all records. There was no way to really understand. But we did see this from the State Department in January. It was confirmed by very credible media outlets that even said they were in the ICU. And remember, with this virus, if 3 people got sick, they were spreading the virus before they went to the hospital. And we know half the people are asymptomatic. So there are a lot of other people who are asymptomatic spreading it. That's very distinct of this virus.
It seems so obvious now, and I apologize for interrupting. I'm trying to push through a lot of stuff here in a short amount of time. How often did you or members of the task force inquire about the origins of this virus? In your conversations, when you're meeting, how often did it come up?
So in the task force context, we very rarely talked about the origins. And personally, it didn't matter to me when fighting the virus, whether it was natural or it leaked. It matters for a lot of other reasons, but to create testing, to create the vaccines, none of that was absolutely essential about where it originated. So we didn't spend a lot of time in the task force talking about that specific issue.
So you gave a note to our producers before the show today. And I want to use your words. Correct me if I'm wrong here. This is very critical stuff, perhaps, in the end. It is not outrageous to hypothesize, you say, that the virus could have been part of an offensive bioweapons program and leaked out accidentally.
Sure, that seems to be discounted. Well, that seems to be discounted by Dr. Collins and other people. I think the most likely explanation is that it was gain-of-function mutation work, it leaked out. But unlike the United States does not have an offensive biological weapons program. There are multiple open sources of intel that suggest that China has an extensive biological weapons program and that it's integrated between state laboratories, academia, and private industry. So it is not crazy, as people suggest, like Dr. Collins suggested, that this could have been part of a bio program.
That would suggest
that
we could be going in a whole new direction then if you're right on that. I mean, how firm are you in that belief or possibility?
No. Well, it is certainly a possibility. This virus is not a great biological weapon if you look at characteristics, but it certainly could have been part of a program. And again, I'm not saying that it was. I'm saying that that should still be considered a possibility. The most likely explanation is this was dangerous research, could have been funded by the NIH, and it leaked out by a laboratory accident. I still think that is the most likely explanation, and we need to work on that and get to the bottom of it.
A couple clips here. April of 2020, May of 2020. I mean, it's very intriguing now. Here's Dr. Fauci trying to explain what happened.
The mutations that it took to get to the point where it is now is totally consistent with a jump of a species from an animal to a human. This could not have been artificially or deliberately manipulated.
What a liar.
The mutations have naturally evolved.
Okay, so I was watching him on CNN last hour. He said, again, most likely animal to human today, but is open-minded. How much CYA is happening today?
Well, the statement from last year was completely false. There was no pattern of mutations that suggests that it went right from an animal in a natural situation to humans. And there's still no evidence to show that. So that statement was completely wrong. It was obvious to be antagonistic to President Trump.
Wow. You heard it right here. My word. Can you believe that Fauci actually lied? And China could possibly be working on something that they could purposely release like this, or accidentally, allegedly? Interesting. Any rate, let's go ahead and move on to the next story. And it says, breaking huge update from Arizona Audit. Director Ken Bennett, only 14 pallets are remaining out of 44 pallets, and there's more. Interesting. On Wednesday, Jordan Conradson spoke to Arizona Forensic Audit Director Ken Bennett regarding the pace and procedures of counting ballots in the historic AZ audit. Here's what Bennett had to say. This is an explosive update. The best way for me to estimate the total is to count that we're now down to 14 pallets that haven't been touched. When the county delivered the ballots on April 22nd, there were 46 pallets. 2 of those were just test ballots, and some others spoiled ballots and things like that. So pallets with ballots on them were about 44, and we're down to 14. So I think we're quickly coming up on about 2/3 completed. Most pallets have 40 boxes on a pallet, some have 32, but most of them have 40 boxes, and it varies, but usually a box has between 1,200 and 1,300 ballots in each box. So a pallet usually has between 40 and 50,000 pallets or ballots on a pallet. So you're getting through this through probably one a day, would you say? But at least, I think we're doing about 1.5 pallets a day, and there's only 14 left. So if we're doing 1.5 a day, counting, we could be done in the middle of June. So maybe 10 days. All right, let's move on to the video here. It's down here, and I'll go ahead and play this for you.
Do you guys have an updated total?
Well, the best way for me to estimate the total is to count that we're now down to about 14 pallets that haven't been touched. When the county delivered the ballots on April 22nd, there were 46 pallets, but 2 of those had just test ballots and some other spoiled ballots and things like that. So pallets with ballots on them were about 44, and we're now down to 14. So I think we're quickly coming up on about 2/3.
That is awesome.
It is.
How many boxes are on each pallet? There's 200 ballots in each box, or?
No, Most pallets have 40 boxes on a pallet.
Okay.
Some had 32, but most of them have 40 boxes, and it varies, but usually a box has between 12 and 1,300 ballots in each box. So a pallet usually has between 40 and 50,000 pallets.
Okay, so essentially he's saying the same thing that's in the article. At any rate, good news, good news. Things are happening for the Patriots. Okay, let's move on to the next one. It says happening now. Violent Minneapolis Black Lives Matter mob loots sneaker shop, Target, Walgreens, CVS, and more. Imagine that. Black Lives Matter, BLM. All right, a large mob of BLM militants looted a Target late Thursday evening in response to a fatal police shooting in the city. That's a good reason to loot. Winston Boogie Smith, 32, was reportedly wanted on a state warrant for being a felon in possession of a firearm. After being stopped in his vehicle by law enforcement, the U.S. Marshal Service says he produced a handgun. It says at least one person has already been assaulted and was left unconscious at Target. That's just really sad. The circumstances did not matter, and hoodlums took the opportunity to rob Target for justice or whatever. Here, let's go ahead and see what the security guard's got to say. It says, "Are you the security guard for Target?" "Yes." "Yay, I'm doing my best, man."
No, I shop here.
Are you security for Target?
You're security for Target?
I'm doing my best, man. You know?
Interesting. Doesn't look like he's working too hard to me there. What else we have here? Let's go ahead and play this one.
Media! Media!
This is just sickening.
Media! 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 Okay. Media! Media! Media!
We have crowbars and we're going to tear this BH up. I promise you, says the protester. Oh my word. These people need to go to jail, and they need to go to jail fast. Okay, moving on to the next story. Boom! Mike Lindell files a Fed lawsuit against Dominion and Smartmatic for weaponizing the court system to silence Lindell and others about election. And I can't say that word there. The popular MyPillow CEO, whose incredible story of how Jesus Christ saved him from his addictions to gambling, alcohol, cocaine, and eventually crack cocaine, has been fighting to uncover the election since November 5th, 2020. On the morning after the election, Americans were stunned to discover Trump's incredible lead had evaporated in critical swing states where the counting of absentee ballots suddenly stopped, and then in the wee hours of the morning when the counting resumed, Joe Biden suddenly and inexplicably had taken the lead over Trump in multiple states. It's a miracle! Along with millions of other Americans, Lindell has refused to accept the results of the election and are not giving up on their fight to examine and expose what happened in the nation's most hotly contested election. Interesting, interesting. All right, let's go ahead and move to the next story here. It says former Treasury officials sentenced to prison for leaking Mueller-related documents. A former Treasury Department official has been sentenced to 6 months in prison for leaking thousands of confidential reports and financial documents related to former President Trump, Russia, and Special Counsel Robert Mueller's investigation. Natalie Mayflower Sowers Edwards was sentenced Thursday for one count of conspiracy for leaking over 2,000 documents known as suspicious activity reports to a reporter who had worked at BuzzFeed News, according to CNN. I transmitted a file containing or disclosing the existence of a Czar, Edwards said in January when she pled guilty to the crime. I'm sorry for what I've done, and I apologize to you, Your Honor, and the court. The documents she released in BuzzFeed from 2017 to 18 included information regarding former Trump campaign chairman Paul Manafort, his business associate Rick Gates, the Russian embassy, and Maria Butina, the Russian guns rights activist and accused spy for the Kremlin. BuzzFeed spokesperson Matt Mittenthal criticized Edwards' sentencing, calling her a brave whistleblower who fought to warn the public about grave risks to America's national security, according to Politico. What do you do? Okay, and we'll move on to this one. It says Biden amends Trump era executive order prohibiting investments in certain Chinese companies. Oh, yeah, that's what we need. Let's help the communists. President Biden has issued an executive order amending a Trump era order that prohibits investments in some Chinese companies. Today, Biden signed an executive order to further address the ongoing national emergency declared in the Executive Order 13959 of November 12, 2020, with respect to the threat posed by the military-industrial complex of the People's Republic of China, according to a White House fact sheet. President Biden also expanded the scope of this national emergency by finding that the use of Chinese surveillance technology outside the PRC, as well as the development or use of Chinese surveillance technology to facilitate repression or serious human rights abuses, constitute unusual and extraordinary threats. This executive order allows the United States to prohibit, in a targeted and scoped manner, U.S. Whoa, where'd that go away? Hold on. Sorry about that. U.S. investments in Chinese companies that undermine the security of democratic values in the U.S. and our allies, the White House said. There are 59 entities listed in the order's annex that are subject to the order's prohibitions. We know for a fact that that Wall Street is helping to finance the Chinese Communist Party effort to weaken and ultimately replace American leadership. Florida Senator Mark Rubio said in a statement, "The story of the past 2 decades has been America's unwillingness to confront Beijing's exploitation of our legal, political, and financial systems, while the administration updated the Trump-era policy in important ways. I am very concerned that Biden's Treasury Department is too closely aligned with Wall Street to take the actions necessary to prevent American savings from being used to fund the Chinese Communist Party." Let's go ahead and move on to what Cirsten has here to say about our UN vehicles, and I have some interesting photos here, alleged information that is. So let's go ahead and move on to Cirsten. Hold on 1 second here.
Butter's Pub, and
Right.
quite a hit. So thank you, Kristen.
Thank you for showing me Myrtle Beach after I got eaten up. Okay, go ahead.
Good. Down south, we say that means you taste good, you know?
Oh, okay. All right, so let's talk about that corrupt mayor that you had. What happened to him?
Well, John Rose actually was a good friend. I knew him very, very well. We all went to church together. We were family friends. And as he went on in his development as mayor, he wanted to expand Myrtle Beach. And all of a sudden, he started going to China quite a bit. And it was quite the news everywhere. The budgets blew up. He was spending lots of money, and people were not happy, as you can imagine. So that was very mysterious. He just said eventually we would have all this Chinese money coming into Myrtle Beach, which will revolutionize us. Yeah, and we're like, okay. But people were furious because of the money that was being spent, and they wanted him to concentrate on the United States. Myrtle Beach is on the way to everything. And as you and I discussed, from New York to Canada, if they're coming down south, if they're going to Florida, if they're going to Miami, or they're going to see the second White House, as everybody says, they got to come by Myrtle Beach. So we see a
Right.
lot of stuff, as you and I have discussed. It comes
Right.
right. There was really not a need we did not feel at this time, and he spent multi millions of dollars and was gone a lot. So that was very, I'd say, kind of shady there.
Mhm.
So that was an great discussion for the locals and for the politicians. And then, of course, he got COVID. No one knew he had
Yeah,
COVID.
right.
No,
Yeah, right. He got COVID. Yeah. Did he really?
he got COVID. We go to the same church. He was active, a nice man. Didn't know he had COVID. No one said he had COVID.
Yeah, right.
And then he died like that. So they said. So, I mean, like, it was all a big mystery, very fast.
Sounds kind of fishy. And then what was the wife doing at the funeral?
Well, we didn't have a big funeral at our church.
No, but she was they had a private funeral, right?
Private when she was not very happy. And
Yeah, she was cursing at him at the funeral.
Talk about family issues there, but I'll let you use your imagination. She's been voicefully very not happy with her ex-husband. Let's just put it that way. Angry is a better word for it. But it's all a big mystery. I will tell you that shortly before his thanks to you and thanks to Monkey Works, we were alerted to big planes coming through. And I live very, very close to a private airport in North Myrtle Beach. And I'm going to tell you, my house shook. I was woken up 2 nights in a row with giant sound and huge noise. A friend of mine actually had called the day before and said, what in the world's going on? She lives probably a quarter of a mile from me on the waterway and a little bit further down. And she was actually frightened. It woke her up. She could just hear these huge planes or vehicles. This is a small private airport, so that's pretty strange. Those were all exactly along the same time. And we thought that was very peculiar.
Right. And then, of course, you sent me that information yesterday from Mr. Wood, Mr. Elwood, let's just say, okay? And that was very interesting. Almost the same timing as the time that ship came in. First, let's do the ship since the ship came in first. Let's share that. There's this huge ship that came in. Oh, by the way, yes, your mayor also sold the antique Ferris wheel and everything to China, correct?
I'll tell you this one. My mother, bless her, we call her Miss Kitty. She was from Alabama, good old Southern belle. One day called, Kathy, you're not going to believe this. We're being invaded. And I said, Mama, we're not being invaded. Okay. But there were Chinese ships off the coast of South Carolina. This is no exaggeration. Some politicians sold our most historic portion of downtown Myrtle Beach, which was not good. Brokenhearted, something called the Pavilion, which was actually a dance place on the ocean, and many famous bands like Alabama played there. But it was a historic monument where 5 roads come down and meet, and also the Grand Strand Boulevard where everybody drags the strip Fonzie style. And they just sold the daggum thing. So one day, within the next year, with zero warning now, you just don't do this to little Myrtle Beach. No warning. There were Chinese barges off the coast of Pawleys Island, South Carolina. They just woke up and there were lines of Chinese barges. Hello. So my mother called and said, I just called to say goodbye. We're being invaded. And 85 years old. She was scared to death. And all the neighbors were just, freaking out. So what had happened, the government, and this is very odd, the government, unbeknown to the people, this is what they say, had sold our famous roller coaster, the Kit Kat, which this was an antique by that time. Tick, 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 tick. It just kind of went by real slow. I actually rode it the last night it was open. Just for, people were very upset. And this was we're not an old city, as you know, Kristen. We're only from the 30s. And so to sell our most historic stuff is a big deal to us. And so supposedly the government put out an alert, said, okay, everybody calm down. These Chinese ships are here to take some of the pavilion away. They're not here to invade. I mean, they actually had to do public service announcements. And so
Wow.
we're coming in. Pawleys Island does not have a port. There's nowhere for them to land. I mean, hello, people. They got shrimp down there and a lot of good seafood, but there is no port.
It's tiny. Why would they go there? They should have just gone into Myrtle Beach itself. Gosh, it's so crazy.
That would be the same difference, except that it had 18 million people probably, in the street,
Right.
eating popcorn,
Right.
and margaritas, saying, "Look here," But
yeah, when they took that pavilion, that whole place is just like an empty area now and has no. Hopefully, Gene gets in and he can fix that situation. But yeah.
I down there and showed you the big circle. It's just a eyesore, isn't it? It's just a big blank.
Right. Yeah, it's got no charm, nothing. They just took it. I wonder what you said they were. You think they were doing something with it in China? I have no idea what, a coral or something. Do you think they were growing on it or something?
They sold the Kit Kat roller coaster, this antique thing, they gave to China. Well, Lord, they've got steel coming out their ears over there. Come on, I've seen the buildings they're building, and they came over here to get our Kit Kat roller coaster. Are you kidding me? From the 30s, 50s, no. And they're going to grow coral reefs on them.
Yeah.
Is that weird?
Okay, let's get into the ship that came in 5 days ago to Charleston, which might be the largest bug city I've ever been to. Okay, Marco Polo is a 3.5 mile football fields long, 3.5 mile football fields, and this is what Mr. Wood was talking about. Large, medium, and little containers. What is he talking about? Is he talking about kitties inside those containers? Is it weapons? Is it weather weapons? Is it the same crap? Why so much stuff? And Port of Virginia enjoyed a milestone on May 23rd. Then it went to Charleston. Arrival of the CMA-CGM Marco Polo. And it's just remember, it's 3.5 football fields long. That's how big it is. Look how big it is. It's huge. And the vessel is the largest container ship to call on the East Coast. In addition, the Hampton Roads, it made stops in New Jersey, Charleston, and Savannah, Georgia. And Marco Polo is owned by International Shipping Company and Logistics Company, CMA CGM, headquarters in Marseille, France. And I think it came in from the Bahamas. And what were they carrying? That's the question. Yeah. What were they carrying?
One of the reports that I've looked into since you and I talked is they're obviously dropping off stuff. They keep going to port. They get to us. Savannah is just one of them. That's interesting. 1,300 feet long. Now, the other thing that's very curious about this that I did not get to tell you, Kristen, is that there were huge lawsuits on the size and capacity of ships coming into Charleston. The nature of the Audubon Society, you name it. I have friends that were attorneys on the defense of Charleston. They don't want large ships. It is commonly known that only small ships, only the smallest of like Carnival, are allowed to even come there, and it's very guarded on how much. Because if you've been to Charleston, like you said, you visited, it's going to block the whole, right?
Right, right.
They don't want.
I don't know what they're doing, but they timed it so it's in the same time as this. Let's take a look at these. These are the UN vehicles that I was talking about that Mr. Wood exposed, and here's some pictures of them. This is my Twitter, obviously. Here's one. Do you see that? Can you all see that? That's one vehicle. And here's one on a truck. Are they filming a movie? What's going on? Is the UN invading? Are they exiting the UN vehicles from the United States? We know the Patriots are winning, so what's going on? That's the question. What is going on?
Well, the ship came Friday, Kristen. Okay, it came in Friday, and guess who agreed to them? Our governor, McMaster, and Senator female Mace met them at the ship.
Wow.
Very interesting.
And Yeah, but these vehicles are going all the way, North Carolina. So they can't be filming a movie in 4 states: North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, Tennessee. Where else were they, Kathy? You said they were spotted somewhere else.
In the small city of what's called Mount Pleasant, and you have to go over a bridge to go to the smallish area. You remember that gorgeous bridge you saw? They kind of look like
right.
a bridge. They had to go to that bridge. Think about that, just to get to Mount Pleasant. Okay, so that's pretty bizarre. So they went to Mount Pleasant because friends of mine, took pictures of the vehicles there. Then I have other very, very close friends that for not 1, not 2, but 3 days since Friday, they've seen these white-looking UN vehicles on the back of flatbed trucks on Highway 31 here in Myrtle Beach going north.
Yes, Mr. Wood says that he's gotten reports of the UN vehicles being seen in South Carolina, North Carolina, Virginia, and Tennessee.
Correct.
And right after that, that was when right before that, the ship appeared in. Did these vehicles come off the ship?
That's what we're thinking.
These vehicles came off the ship.
We don't know for sure.
Yeah.
But the bizarre thing is our governor doesn't go and greet ships.
Right.
And Senator Mace, what in the world? I mean, what in the world are they doing? Welcome them to South Carolina when people are furious that this ginormous ship is there. People aren't happy. They don't want this giant ship there in the beautiful historic city. I mean, it just doesn't.
Right. And it could be the one that brought in all these UN vehicles, and hopefully they're not trying to do a takeover from the South. It's crazy, right?
Yeah, it's
insane.
There was an alleged. This is alleged. Also, I'll get back to you on this. But one of the National Guard's units were supposedly training in a different country with the UN.
Oh wow.
Yeah. So I'll get back to you with some information. And I was like, wow. So my intel said that perhaps they were, quote, reconnecting. Isn't that weird? So I was like,
wow. That is insane.
But
I mean, that would make sense that they came off the ship because the ship was large enough to house all these vehicles, right?
Absolutely. But you know how small that downtown area is down there.
Right.
They had to take it possibly down to the old military base. That maybe each city that they landed at, each city that they stopped at, they unloaded a couple of those vehicles. That's what I'm thinking. That makes sense. What a coincidence! At the same time, they showed up. The only reason is to unload. Right. Not far. I would say from Myrtle Beach, it's about 3 hours, but from Charleston, it's only about an hour and a half driving. That's pretty close.
Right. Yeah, that's pretty close.
That's pretty daggone close. But in one report, my good friend said that he was on 31 with them. That's the bypass, so you don't go downtown.
Right.
And these were brand spanking new on the back of flatbeds.
Yeah, you can tell. They look brand spanking new. And they don't look like they were made in the United States either. Sorry, but they don't.
Well, and and I heard on the fraud report that possibly South Carolina manufactures UN vehicles. That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. Okay, I've been born. Not one time has that been mentioned in the paper I've read. Nor do you think we'd be talking about UN vehicles? I do believe we would be. I mean, that's the good old boys will be lining up, Kristen. I'm telling you that. It just
that's not where it's at. Yeah.
And don't forget that we have Fort Jackson in Columbia is the largest military base, training base in the United States. Did you know that? In Columbia.
Wow.
Yes, we did.
Yeah, I went to that. They have in Charleston. They have that school. Is that Columbia? That's Columbia, right? The military school.
No, Columbia State. Charleston has University of Charleston, but we do have a very prestigious medical university there.
There's a military school there in Charleston, right? I went by that.
The submarine school.
The Citadel.
Yes, of course, but there is a sub training facility there. as well.
Oh my gosh, it's so crazy what's going on. Everything's like happening at one time and you're like trying to piece it all together. But that would make sense because if they're not filming a movie, because they wouldn't be filming a movie in 5 states. They would be unloading in every state some vehicles. That would make sense. That's just my common sense. Why would they be filming in 5 states? So the government needs to get on this. Yeah.
I guess Biden chased him out of Georgia at Tyler Perry's studios.
Oh my
We're
God.
a little busy with Biden and his boys up there, right?
Oh my God. So
See,
crazy.
I've got old Malarkey Joe here. You know,
I've got your beautiful she made me a beautiful cross with a lot of shells. It's in my bathroom. It's gorgeous. That's funny.
that's right. Yeah, that's a chew toy for my husky.
Yes, exactly.
You gotta have fun with this stuff because it'll drive you crazy.
Yeah, exactly. It's going to be over soon, folks. I hope it's going to be over soon. But I'd like to thank the show that I did last night. I put in the links. My first book, but
Wow, folks. Well, you heard it right here. The UN has vehicles that they've been bringing into the U.S. for quite some time, and now they're bringing in some new ones. What is this administration and the deep state up to? At any rate, well, at least we know that nothing happens in the U.S. that God isn't aware of. And He is all over this and what's going on. And Hank Kuhneman and Man of Grace and several other the prophets have all said that God is all over this and He's moving. So we can look forward to seeing His justice really soon. Okay, well, I guess that's the show for today. Thank you for tuning in to Truth Be Told with Don V under partly cloudy skies again in Arizona. We'll talk to everyone later.